Hello.
Hi.
Welcome everyone to the Harness of the Power of Planning podcast. I'm Allegra Ramos and this is my friend Natascha Corrigan.
Hi.
And if you've joined me before, you know that I am all about helping you prioritize yourself and your goals. And today is our 100th episode. I know the
Amazing.
scream, oh, or the Macaulay Culkin. Or I feel like I should be ringing a bell. Woohoo! 100 episodes. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe it.
Is that backwards when I do it like this?
No, that looks right. Yes. Wow, 100 episodes. I can't believe it. Okay, before we get started, or before we lose track of getting started, I just want to say today's episode is all about coming up with actionable plans for your goals. Natascha and I are going to talk about a goal of mine that I've been working on for the last 2.5 years, and perhaps a goal of hers. And then after Natascha and I'm going to have my friend Angela on, and we're going to talk about her goal of wanting to improve her health and how we can get her there. And then my friend Christine and I are going to talk about her goal of helping to ensure that she's raising resilient kiddos. So I think that these are really relatable goals that a
Amazing.
lot of us are thinking about right now. And I'm not used to having my hair down. So I might be like, oh, I have hair.
It looks amazing, though. Honestly, I love it.
I felt like I was having a
Worth the
good
scan.
hair day. So I decided for episode 100 to put it down. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But as you know, I like to start with pulling a card from this little deck of cards. So let's see what the universe has decided we need to talk about today. The doors we open and close each day decide the lives we live. Flora, I'm not sure if it's Whitmore or Whitemore. Flora Whitemore. Flora Whitmore. The doors we open and close each day decide the lives we live.
In-
Yes. Yes. Actually,
Interesting.
yeah, Natascha, you and I were kind of talking about this, I don't know, maybe a dozen episodes ago when we were talking about, I think we were talking about advice we'd give our younger selves. And one of
Yeah.
the things that I would have said to my younger self was opportunities are rarer than you think. If there's something you want to do, don't pass up on it thinking it's going to come back around because chances are it's not.
Right. Don't be afraid to be imperfect inside of it, right? You think, oh, I'll wait till I'm perfect before I answer that call, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This quote is very, it's causes a teensy bit of anxiety for me because, like, you know me, I have a hard time making decisions, and I have a hard, so, like, oh my goodness. And often what I'll do is perceptually keep all the doors open in some way, but that's also not actually really what's happening, right?
Mhm.
You've got to choose something, right? Or choose a couple things. You can't keep all the doors open all the time. It's just,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Although I am old enough to say that sometimes the door does reopen in surprising ways, which is
Mm,
actually kind of a perfect segue
yeah.
into the topic we want to talk about, which
Mhm.
is the goal that I have been working on for the last 2.5 years is to produce my own stand-up comedy show. And that came to fruition exactly 12 days ago on March 29th. I produced my first comedy show. Natascha was there.
It was fantastic. It was really fantastic. It was so fun, so funny. It was just a perfect mix of people. You put together such a great lineup, and what a
Thank
great space too. The place that you did was very welcoming and just,
Yes.
it was great.
Yes. And so let me just back up a little bit and just explain how that taps into this quote right here, which is the doors we open and close each day decide the lives we live. So I have always loved stand-up comedy. And when I was in my 20s, I did do some stand-up comedy. However, I closed that door because first of all, the stand-up comedy culture 30 years ago was very different than it is now.
Mm.
It
Mhm.
was not very welcoming to women. The comedy was a lot angrier and meaner. And also, if you remember back then, I don't know every state, but in California, you could still smoke everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And I don't like smoke. And so being in a smoke-filled room and driving from smoke-filled room to smoke-filled room every night
Yeah.
just did not sound like how I wanted to spend my time. And so I closed that door firmly, and honestly, without a lot of really, I hadn't thought about it much since then, until 2019 when I saw this amazing comedian, Bobby Oliver, Bobbie, and actually, it was at the comedy club that I hosted the show that I had, 12 days ago, and I saw Bobby Oliver, and Bobby markets herself as a punk Southern feminist, which I feel like suits her perfectly. You might be wondering, "What does that mean?" Well,
Yeah.
go to Amazon Prime, buy her comedy special. It's amazing. Highly recommend it. And so I saw her in 2019, and first of all, she was just so fantastically funny, but also seeing her made me realize that comedy had changed a lot. A lot of it has to do with streaming because now there's so many ways for people to get their comedy to its audience, and she started me back on my comedy journey. And so that was in 2019, I saw her, and I guess it just sort of planted the seed. And then 2.5 years ago, well, the pandemic literally the pandemic happened. I saw her no, sorry, I did not see her in 2019. I saw her in January 2020. I saw her Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So
I saw her in
yeah.
January 2020. Pandemic happened, obviously everything shut down. And then about 2.5 years ago when things were opening up enough, I decided and so this is kind of getting into how I had this goal. Literally, from the very moment that I started doing Comedy Guide, I knew I wanted to do a show. And I kinda thought that the show might be comedians, like older comedians. I think I had mentioned this. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast or just to you, Natasha, but I had mentioned this idea of doing a show of comedians over 40.
Yeah.
And partially that's because I just really enjoy the comedy of comedians over 40. But as I was out there meeting people, I don't know, it just wasn't there wasn't that in Spanish, there's a great phrase called, "Yo tengo ganas," and it means, like, I have, like, an urge or I have a desire or, like, like, you don't really for me, it's hard for me to do anything if I don't tengo ganas to do it, right? If I'm not feeling that, like,
Yeah.
inner momentum towards doing the thing, then it kinda doesn't happen, aside from taxes, right?
Right. Inevitable. That's taxes are
Yeah.
inevitable.
No
That's
tengo ganas to do
yeah.
taxes, but I gotta do it.
But
But when it comes to these other goals in our lives, you have to have kind of this inner fire towards this thing, and
mhm.
I wasn't feeling that. So, again, let me back up. So, I decided I wanted to create a comedy show. Well, guess what? One does not just create a comedy show, be right? Because, first of all
One does not simply just
yeah,
create a
you don't just
comedy show.
decide to create one and do it. You have to know comedians. You have to know spaces.
Mhm.
You have to be able to sell the tickets. As a producer, are
Right.
you going to perform in the show yourself or not? I wanted to perform in the show. Okay, if I'm going to perform in a show with my name on it that I'm producing, I need to be at a certain level of comedy in order to do that. So all of these things
Mhm.
factor into whatever the goal is that you want to do. You can't I think a lot of people write down, produce a comedy show as a goal, and then never think about
Yeah.
all the things that they need to have in place in order for that comedy show
Right.
not just to happen, but to happen with an audience and to be fun and to my show sold out. I made money. I am a paid comedian.
So and therefore
I
a
am a professional
professional,
comedian. It's actually my second time being paid. I
right?
just wanna so
Listen, you're a successful professional.
Um, so these are all the things one has to think about when one has a goal, right? So I started with open mics, and open mics are happen all over the place, at least in the Los Angeles area.
Yeah.
I know in smaller towns, open mics happen, but they might be mixed open mics. It might be comedy and music, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or it might be an open mic that doesn't happen at a comedy club, but it happens one night a week at a music club. Like, for instance, I've done comedy in Hawaii, and Hawaii doesn't have a lot of comedy clubs, but they have like one night of comedy at these clubs. So
Yeah.
so that was my first goal, was to start doing open mics and to kind of find a home, if you will, like a place where I could feel comfortable going regularly among other comedians that I enjoyed, for networking. And also too, as a woman, a place that I felt safe going to regularly, because a lot of
Right.
comedy happens at night. There's some places where the parking is a little sketchy.
Sketchy. Yeah. Because you can find an open mic here in LA every single
Mhm,
night of the week,
mhm.
for sure. Same thing with the music and so forth. So lucky for you, you get to kind of cherry pick a little bit which ones you like and which ones feel good for you and that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. So I was able to find a few, Dow being one of them, where I could kind of make it my home and really just focus my energy, because that's the thing with goals, is you have to make it accessible to you. If I had to drive an hour to get to that open mic, it was gonna be less likely that I was gonna go regularly than if I could drive 20 minutes. Um,
Right. Makes a big
it does.
difference,
It makes a
honestly.
big
Yeah.
difference. If it's in a safe part of town, or if there's free parking that's lit and safe or whatever, all of these things factor
Yeah.
in to whether or not you're gonna do it, right? If you for instance, maybe you've heard me talk about the fact that my husband is a surfer. It's actually part of my comedy sometimes. And the challenge with surfing is that so many things need to be aligned, like literally the elements need to be aligned.
It's so crazy. Surfing is wild to me because of all
Yeah,
that.
so
Yeah.
many things need to be aligned. So you have to think about all these things that, like, for instance, if you wanna be a professional snowboarder and you live in a tropical island, you're gonna have to move. So,
Right.
those types of things make a big difference in terms of whether or not you're gonna be able to work towards your goal. And so I was able to find some places, and one of the places I found, which I did not know this in advance, and so this is kind of the magic of stepping out and taking that first step towards your goal.
Mm.
You're gonna find out things that help you out. So one of the places that is one of my comedy homes is Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank.
Yeah.
And
Great space.
Flappers, I literally found online, they had a flow chart, the career of a stand-up comedian. And it said, first you start doing
That's,
open mics, then you start
uh-huh.
hosting, then you start doing this. Like, I was just like, yay, a roadmap. Oh my,
Amazing.
amazing, right?
That's amazing. Yeah. Honestly. Like how wonderful to have some clear, specific steps,
Absolutely.
right?
So, roadmap, and look, sometimes a roadmap is not going to be as literal as this one was. Sometimes a roadmap might be a person who can help you with your goal. Sometimes it'll be a combination. So, I found this roadmap and I said, oh, okay. So, I am going to open mics. The next step is I want to do the hosting. How do I do the hosting? Oh, first of all, to become a host at Flappers, which I am now a host at Flappers, to become a host at Flappers, first you have to take their workshop on hosting. Now, not every comedy club will have this, but I said, sure, why not? Let's
Mhm.
cut down my learning time here. I'm going to take this class on hosting.
Yeah.
Um, and so I went from doing open mics to doing a couple workshops at Flappers to being invited to perform at Flappers. And then because Flappers records all of their comedy events, I was able to buy my own videos that I could then use to submit to other places to say, here's my 5 minutes, because that's what you have to do. And that's how I started getting
Yeah.
booked in other places. And as this was happening, obviously my confidence is growing as a comedian, and I'm starting to meet people. And one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of my people becoming comedy friends were not over 40. So, not only am I, no tango ganas to do this late bloomer show, but also I'm not even meeting the
Yeah.
people I need to meet to put this show on. And
Mhm.
a lot of my comedy is about the fact that I am Asian and Latin. And so I said, "You know what? One of my best comedy friends, she's Chinese and young. One of my other best comedy friends, he's Latin and young." I said, "What if I put on a show that was all Asian and Latin comedians?" And I'm not kidding, it was less than 5 seconds later that the name of the show came to me, which is Soy Saucy.
Which is a phenomenal name. I love it. I love that name so much. And look, you had this idea, you put it out there, you had this idea made, but you weren't like so attached to this idea of over 40 having to be, it just, that was a place to
Right.
start off, right? That was a
Mhm.
springboard. And then the community or the universe or whatever came to you and was like, hey, because it built it, like you got your people, you didn't have to find them, they
Mhm.
found you, right? Because you were vibing. You had that soy saucy vibe even before you knew what to call it. And it came to you. That's really a great example of how to, go move forward on your goals. Have this idea, have some
Yeah.
kind of outline, but also open to what shows up.
Yeah, and look at what's possible because, I have as those of you who watch the show, I have quite a few things happening in my life, and so I don't have the time. I mean, some comedians literally, we call it going up. Some comedians go up 20 to 30 times a week. I spoke to Bobby, she's one of my comedy mentors, and I said, "Bobby, what's the least amount that I realistically need to do?" And she said, "You need to go up at least once a week, minimum," because and I totally agree with her as a public speaker, I see this too. Public speaking is such a multi-brain it uses so many parts of your brain activity, and you need to keep those networks all knit together through practice, because when you're not doing something regularly, right? Like playing the piano, you've all felt that, or speaking a foreign language,
Oh yeah.
those networks break down because your brain's like, "Oh, this is no longer important, so I'm not gonna support this network anymore."
Yeah.
And so the public speaking, stand-up comedy, I would say they're both similar in that way, where you have to be exercising it regularly in order to keep it tight and sharp and fresh. So Bobby said once a week, and I was like, "Great, I can do that." And so I put that in my schedule. Once a week, I go up, I make it happen. Sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's not pretty, but I
Yeah.
show up
Right.
and chip away at that goal. And so there we go. 2.5 years, my first comedy show sold out. I actually have a conversation this week with the location that I want to book for the second one. I already have people asking me, when are the tickets for the second one going on sale? Eh,
That's
yes. And
amazing.
I also have comedians pitching themselves to Soy Saucy. So
This is amazing. I hope everybody's taking in, like, this is not a small thing that Allegra's talking about here. This is significant. And in the fact that you're being sought after only one show, you have comedians going like, hey, how can I get in on it?
well, it
Yeah,
feels like
amazing.
it's actually tapped into something that people wanted. Maybe they didn't know they wanted it until they heard
Mhm.
it. But I mean, it was such an interesting show.
It was great. It
There
was
was
great.
a synergy there that I was
Yes.
hoping for, but you can't really plan for. I was like, "Am I gonna be the only one who gets this because I am Asian and Latin?"
Yeah, I don't think being neither Asian nor
Right.
Latin, I totally thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, for sure. I can absolutely attest to, it being exactly synergistic and really just funny. You want a comedy show to be funny, and it was very funny and lots of different kind of flavors to go with the soy
Yes.
saucy theme. Flavors of
Yes,
funny.
many different
Yeah.
flavors of funny. So, did you have a goal that you wanted to talk about?
I am so I have something that is very hands-on and very different,
Mm, mhm.
very
Let's do it.
esoteric than we've talked about in the past. And it's very specific. I want to hit a certain
Mhm.
number in my work this year as far as like earnings go, right? And so there is like a very specific, like in fact, excuse me, I don't have that specific number yet, but
Interesting.
I want to have a specific number. So I think that's probably the first goal. I want something that's realistic, but a little bit unrealistic, like
Stretch.
a smidge past
Yeah.
realistic. Yeah, a little bit of a stretch. And and as you know, with me, the most difficult thing for me is being consistent around something. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, so do this, this, and this, and
Mhm.
you'll make more money, right? And so there is kind of a structure, like you said, there is a roadmap. But I think that the toughest thing for me is to find a way in which it's realistically consistent for me to show up. So I love that you mentioned about Bobby saying once a month, excuse me,
Mhm.
once a week. And so finding a realistic, because I could sit here and be like, all right, I want to do 8 hours of this every single day, and I know that that is something that within four to
Right.
five days I will
Right.
not hit that goal. So that's the main thing is to find a realistic way to keep showing up, or excuse me, a realistic structure where it'll be easy for me to be consistent, or at least it'll be realistic for me to be consistent. Maybe not easy. Some days won't be easy, I'm sure. Some days you probably are like, oh, I don't want to go to that open mic, but you went and you made it
Well, and
happen,
now I
right?
have no choice because 'cause I'm a host of an open mic. So I have it's
You
built in
have to
that
show up.
accountability for me. Okay,
That's
so when it
so
comes to
fun.
choosing
That's
your number, you're right on the mark. You want it to be realistic, but with a little stretch, and there's a lot of brain science behind why you want that, because if you can't believe the number, then your brain will
right.
kind of automatically make that goal less important to you because it's not
Yeah.
realistic. So maybe you
Hmm.
take whatever you made last year and add, I don't know, 25% to that? Does that
Yes,
feel
that's a
in
really.
that?
I'm actually gonna do. So I'm gonna do the. I'm gonna use. That's a really good at 25%. I'm gonna use actually the number that I made the
Mm.
most money
Oh,
that
perfect.
year, and then add, because last year
Right,
wasn't
right,
so
right, right.
great. That's why
Yeah,
I'm.
no, that's great.
So no, the best number plus 25%. That's great, because I was like, do I double it? Do I? And that might be
Right.
too much of a stretch. So 20% is
Mhm.
great. Great. Best year plus 25%. Um, and then like I said, then the next thing is to, like, because of the nature of teaching and really adhering sometimes to other people's
Yeah.
schedules, and really making it so that I have a roster and so forth. My office hours have been like all over
Mm.
the place, right? And so I think the next thing to do is to set some really specific office hours.
Okay.
Still have those, like, odd, you know 7 p.m. on a
Yes.
Tuesday, or that. So those will still, of course, happen, because I have to make sure I'm in line with when my students
Right.
are available, right? But to just have some specific office hours, regardless if I'm actively, engaging with a student or client, to still have
So
some
wait, when you
office
say
hours
office
that are.
hours, do you mean so your students can reach you, or is that time that you're gonna be doing business and making phone calls and networking?
Yes. So yeah. So either A, that would be time where I'm actually actively engaged
Mhm.
with the client, and when that's not happening, then to also just be specifically working on marketing, outflow,
Okay.
that kind of thing. Because I had, like, a specific time for that once a
Mhm.
week, like the outflow, and that just
Mm.
wasn't enough, really,
Mhm.
ultimately. Um, yeah. So to make that specific, like a specific daily office hours
Right. So
situation.
maybe if you just double that and say twice a week,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
would
That's
make
my.
one of those during daytime hours because while it's
Mhm.
great to have your students reaching out to you, I don't know the age of all your students, but I do know some of them are school age, so they'll need to get back to you after
Yeah.
school. But,
Right.
you know, there's a saying about swallow the frog, about doing the thing that makes you the
Yeah.
most uncomfortable, and I'm sensing a little bit
Yeah.
that that's one of the challenges for you is the reaching out for new clients. A and so if you
Mhm.
set an early morning office hour, that might be one of the things where you swallow the frog and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna make some calls," and then it's just done, and it's not
Mhm.
hanging over your head all day long.
Yeah. And morning is, we've gone through, like, am I a tiger, or
Right,
not,
your
sorry, a
chronotype.
lion, or that, my chronotype. Thanks, that's the word. And so early morning isn't necessarily the best for me, but
Yeah,
late
yeah, like
morning is
10,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
So
just something
yeah,
before noon.
for sure before noon.
And just
Yeah,
have your set
absolutely.
day that you are making calls and stuff, and then that'll give you a whole week to sort of, like, recover from however you're feeling about that, and also to plan for the next one, but you still have that
Yes.
evening time that you've set aside for doing office work, so yeah.
Right. I do like having 2 set chunks. And then the thing that I get to declare here
Yes.
publicly is guarding those times,
Mm,
right? Because one, like, if something came up, which would have normally been my, business hour kind of situation or business chunk, if something came up, I was real quick to be like, oh, I could do that later, and just really enjoying that.
yeah.
Yeah, just really, really guarding that, putting the guardrails around that, being really protective of that, and having some boundaries around it for
So that
myself.
sounds great. And look, you're gonna be
Yeah,
doubling, right? It might not sound a lot to people to say go from 1 day to 2 days, but when you think about it, you're doubling your office time.
yeah,
So that's actually
yeah.
really big.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, this, as you know, anything you put your attention on and put like attention and energy outflow will come back. And so all of that kind of had taken
Yeah,
a
yeah.
dive. So this,
Cool. I love it.
excellent.
Great.
Thanks, Allegra. Yeah, thanks for just kind of honing that in for me and having giving me a space to declare it out loud and also be really specific. I
Happy to.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being here on my 100th, and I can't wait to check in and see where you are in 6 months on this goal.
I can't wait to see your next comedy
Yes,
show.
yes.
And thank you. Yes, check in
Thank you
6
so
months. Love it.
much. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so now I'm gonna bring on my friend Angela. If you've watched the show, then you've seen her around. And hi, Angela.
Hello.
Thank you for being here on my 100th.
Of
And
course.
and you had a couple of goals that you had mentioned to me that you wanted to work on, but the one that we agreed that we were gonna talk about today is
Health. It's the hardest. It's the one that you get the most bang for the buck in your life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you're not here for
Absolutely.
yourself, you can't be here for others.
Yeah, I always say that, the world is always shoulding on us. You should do this, you should make this much money, you should look like this, whatever. I try not to should on people. However,
Mhm.
I am going to say you should put your health first, because if your health is not in place, then it becomes the only thing you're thinking about.
Right.
Whereas when your health is in place, you have the capacity to think about other things.
Right.
So,
Right. Plus, I mean, it becomes the hindrance of other goals.
exactly. And I only know this because there were decades when I did not put my health first and I paid for it. And so that's
Right.
so let's talk about what are your health concerns and your health goals?
Yeah. So, you know, women of a certain age, I won't tell you what that age is because decade by decade, we learn more. But one of the things I want to build is more stamina, more strength. Um, so that has to do with, exercise and conditioning, but also
Mhm.
healthy eating. So what I find that I could do sort of back in the day, like I literally went on a banana splits diet when I was about, say,
What?
graduated from college.
Wait,
Yeah,
you went on a what?
a banana split diet. I literally ate nothing but banana splits.
Oh my
And it was just
gosh.
something that came up. Like, I love them so much. I can't do that now. I'm lactose intolerant. But back in the day, I did it just for fun.
Wait, who was promoting this idea, or
You
was
know
this
what?
just
It was
something
my
you came up
idea.
with? Oh my gosh,
My
that is so
idea.
funny.
You know, you remember in Barcelona when they're like, we don't have banana splits, and I was like going through
Yes, I
the
do
whole
remember
thing.
that, but I
Yeah,
didn't remember you had a whole diet about it. That's
yeah.
hilarious.
Well, that was before your time, but I got really good at making banana splits. But yeah, so and I lost weight, but you can lose weight eating anything. It's just how much you give it back in the day. But so now these are the concerns. I know it sounds sort of corny, but yeah. So now I need to do sort of, I just need to stay healthy. I've got a very young child for my age. And like I need to be here for her and I need to
Mhm,
be here for my family. And
mhm.
so the idea is, the older you get, the more you know, the more you learn about um, some of the health things that have gone on in your family that you don't learn about till you're older.
Mhm.
And so it's like, what are the things that I can do now to ensure, I'm healthy as I can be
Right.
in the future? And so that's where I want to be. And so it means eating, exercise, sleep. Yeah,
Mm.
really good sleep hygiene.
Yes.
And there was a period in my life where sleep hygiene was the most important thing, and I was really focused on it after I had, a car accident. So it became very
Yes.
important. Um, And so I know what it looks like. It's getting back to it.
So can we start there? Because it's the most important.
Oh yeah, we can start with sleep hygiene.
Okay, so what's your sleep hygiene look like right now? And by the way, for people who haven't heard the term sleep hygiene is whatever practices you have in place to help you sleep through the night. And if you don't have a sleep hygiene that you've created for yourself, you have one, and it's probably not working for you because it's probably kind of haphazard. So having a sleep hygiene routine is a really powerful thing. Okay, so what's
Yeah.
what's
So
your
I have digressed over time or regressed
okay.
over time. So, but what it looks like right now, it begins with the getting ready to go to bed, right?
Mhm. Yes.
So it's the Nani inspired facial ritual before you
Nani is my middle name.
oh
That's
my
what she's
yeah,
yeah.
the Allegre inspired.
See, this is the problem with having your friends on is you have all these inside jokes, and so
Right. So let me help you guys out. So yeah, Nani has this ritual, a morning ritual for,
let's just stick with my
I'm so
first
sorry.
name.
Allegre. Allegre has this morning ritual. And so I've been around her enough that I picked up on it. It really it's like washing the day away. And it makes you feel like I think I want to go upstairs and like wash my face
Mhm.
and put on, the creams and just a moment to yourself.
Mhm.
And when the water splashes my face, I feel like
Mhm.
the day is over and I'm about to do something for myself
Yes.
and then go to sleep, right?
Mhm.
So that's the great part about it. But now I've moved from then going into my bedroom, turning off the lights, listening to scripture or listening to meditation and just sort of relaxing the body and sleeping, which was a great ritual I used to have,
Mhm.
to, oh, yeah, I need to catch up on this. I need to let
Mm.
me quickly watch this clip.
In bed, right, with your
In
phone?
bed with the blue light, right?
Gotcha, okay.
Um,
So you're
doing
using your devices in bed.
I'm using devices in bed,
Mhm.
and then don't let, like, some hot breaking news clip come on because then I'm, like, on like, trying to search through, like, what's the background? What's this?
Mhm.
In my
Mhm.
job, I just need to keep up with that so that when I'm out with clients, I understand sort of what the landscape is,
Mhm.
from a news perspective, and so that's very important for me to know. Therefore, I'm doing that, and then I'm going to bed with that on my mind versus when
Right.
I used to go to bed with relax your body,
Mhm.
think about how well your day went. Begin
Mhm.
to think about tomorrow. What is it that you want to accomplish?
Yeah. And what
That
time is this all happening, by the way?
it's happening around like 11 at night.
Okay, so what time do you wash your face?
I'm washing my face probably about 10:30.
Okay, and then you're getting into bed at 11,
Yes,
and
and
then
then
what
all
time are
dependent
you
on my child, right? Like, did homework go well? Like,
yeah.
does my hubby have what he needs for tomorrow? I mean, it's all around that, but yeah, it's
Mhm.
around that time frame.
And then what time are you closing your eyes?
I'm usually closing my eyes around 12 o'clock. So that's a long period of time that I'm giving up sleep. And I know it when I'm doing it, but
Mhm.
I can't stop myself. It's a
Well, it's a
discipline.
habit. It's a
Yeah,
habit.
it's a habit. It's a habit.
And the thing is you can't break a habit, right? You have to
Fix
overwrite
it
it
with
in your
something.
brain. Like, if you
Yeah.
think about your brain like a floppy disk or floppy disk, I'm really dating
You're
myself
old.
here.
You're old.
If you think about your brain like a clay tablet or a papyrus roll,
There you
okay.
go.
But you literally have these grooves in your brain that support any habit you have because
Mhm.
it just saves time. It's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna run along this route," and
Right.
you have to create a new route, and it takes time, okay? It does take time. I have one other question, and then I'll have
Yes.
some suggestions.
Okay.
Do you make your bed in the morning?
When I make my bed, I feel so good. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Okay, I'll
Do
take that as
not.
a no. You don't
Okay.
make your bed in the
Okay,
morning.
it's every morning, no, but for the
Okay,
most part, I do.
okay,
And
okay.
what I find really invigorating, and
Yeah,
which is sort of strange, maybe invigorating might not be the word,
uh-huh.
but when Reg and I are making like, if I'm making the bed and
Uh-huh,
then he sees I'm making the bed and he comes alongside, it's
uh-huh.
almost like we're accomplishing something
Yes.
together.
No, you are. You are.
Right, I mean,
Okay.
it's the bed, but like,
Okay. I have one last question, and I can only ask
yes.
this question because I know you and your husband so well.
Okay.
While you are lying in bed on your device, is your husband also doing the same thing, or is the TV on?
The TV's on and he might not be upstairs yet. He might still be doing work because sometimes he'll, work late. He is a night owl. So he might
Right.
be down at his computer actually doing business and work. Yeah.
Okay. So
us.
so the TV's on, but you turned it on.
Yeah. I would if it's on, I turned it on.
Okay. Okay. So here are my suggestions. And I just want to start with the caveat that I don't necessarily think you should try implementing all these suggestions at the same time, because that's
Okay.
kind of a recipe for disaster, much like New Year's resolutions where people are like, I'm going to do 10 things differently. And then you do nothing. Right. Like,
I'm taking notes. Okay.
yeah, your body's going to resist this change because any sort of change means your brain has to work harder.
Mhm.
And as I like to remind people, your brain only takes up 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20% of your calories. And because we are feast and famine animals, the brain's constantly trying to pull you back from using calories unnecessarily.
Right.
So I would try and implement these one at a time and, give it a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then implement the next one. Okay. I know
Gotcha.
you're not going to do that because I know you.
Yes,
You're
you
going
know
to
me.
try and implement 2 at the time. Okay. But I gave you your fair warning.
You
Okay.
told me.
So, number 1,
Yes.
make your bed. I would work on making your bed every day
Okay.
because everything you said is absolutely true. You do get a sense of accomplishment,
Mhm,
of
mhm.
I am in charge of my life, executive function. It also just makes your room neater because for most of us, the bed is a big part of our room. And it has the added benefit of brain studies have shown that at night, when you go unmake your bed, it actually starts signaling your brain, oh, now is the time to calm down and can help give you a better night's sleep.
I believe that.
And literally making my bed is one of the only things I do every single day. I've always been a bed maker, partially because I just like the look of a made bed. I like pretty
Mhm.
pillows, and maybe that could be a reward for yourself. Like if you make your bed. Now, I always have this rule, set a goal for yourself, and then if you hit 70% of that goal, that's a win. Okay? So if
Okay.
you have a goal of making your bed every single day and you hit 70% of that. Now, usually I don't tell people to try and shoot for anything every day, but making your bed, literally, I've timed it. It takes me 30 seconds to make my bed.
Yeah. It doesn't take long at all.
No. And given all the benefits of it, I feel like it's one of the few goals that's worthwhile to shoot for 100%. And if you hit 70%, that's a reward. And you could reward yourself with, a cute little pillow
No
or
more
some.
items in the house.
Okay, no more items. Fine. No problem. So anyway, so that's my first tip, is to work towards making your bed every day. There's so many improvements with that. Secondly, and I'm going to instill a little bit of fear in you here because sometimes fear is motivating.
Okay, Allegra.
Okay.
Bring it on.
Yes. So the thing is that your brain is always secreting some mix of chemicals. But what I learned recently is that the chemicals that are secreted basically between sundown and midnight, and you have to think about sundown because we
Yep.
evolved to live with the sun.
Yes.
We should be winding down when the sun goes down, and we should be gearing up when the sun goes up, at least most of us.
Yes.
You heard Natascha and I talking about chronotypes earlier.
Mhm.
Most of us are daytime animals. There are a few of us who are designed to be more active at night because the tribe
I'm married
always
to
needed
one.
someone. What? I'm sorry?
I'm married to one.
Oh, yes. Well, the tribe needed somebody to be on the
An
lookout
alert.
overnight,
Yeah.
right? But most of us are daytime animals. And so that being said, apparently our brains secrete different ratios of the chemicals depending on the time of the day. And the chemicals that are mostly secreted between sundown and midnight are about cleaning and repairing your brain.
Mhm. Mhm.
And also about starting to encode learning and good
Yeah.
memories.
Mhm.
And the chemical ratio changes after midnight to focus more on the recording of negative memories.
So I should wake up at midnight.
Exactly. You should wake up at midnight. So here's the thing that I think is really interesting, because I happen to know some people who
Mhm.
have difficulty sleeping,
Mhm.
and I also know some of their siblings who don't.
Mhm.
And when they talk about their childhood, one of the one who has trouble sleeping talks about it so much more negatively than the other one. And so when I heard that, I thought to myself, "Huh, I wonder if that's related."
Right, it
Um,
could.
so, the other thing too is that women, especially women of a certain age, we're already kind of in danger of cognitive decline because of the symptoms associated with hormonal changes that
Right.
already disrupt our sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I would encourage you to wash your face at 8:30 or 9.
Okay.
And because I know you have an upstairs and a downstairs, I'm gonna encourage you to leave your phone downstairs.
Okay. And my question, what if there's an emergency? But okay, I'm listening. I can leave it downstairs or on the second, like the second tier.
You're like, "Can I put it on the landing?"
Yeah, I'm gonna put it right here. Right here. Here we
Right,
go.
right, right.
Here we go.
But how about you just, like, slowly move it. Yeah, the landing's perfect because you could still hear it if it was ringing,
Right.
but it's not so close that you're just gonna grab it on your nightstand,
Yep.
right? So I would encourage you to start earlier with your washing your
Evening
face
routine.
and
Uh-huh.
to move your phone away
Okay.
and to go back to listening to the scripture or the meditation or anything that
Okay.
is one calming, because we all know that there are things that we should probably learn about, but the time to learn about them is not during bedtime.
Right.
The time to learn
No.
about them is during the day.
Yeah.
And so, and also too, you'll create a new signal to your brain to start winding down when you get back into this habit of listening to something meditative or scripture. So that'll
Mhm.
be great too, and that'll really help with your sleep.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. It's interesting. I'm thinking about my child at this point, and what do we do at night? We read, we're very quiet, or she listens to a book, gets sleepy on tape,
Mhm.
which is very slow reading.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I should do better. Thank you.
Yes, and for anyone who says, "I can't sleep without my phone in the room because I use it as my alarm," I just wanna suggest to you to move away from that. One of my favorite things is this
Yeah.
is a Fitbit, and what I love about the Fitbit is that the alarm is not audio, it actually vibrates, and it's such a nice, gentle way to wake up, and the Fitbit also, certain models have something called Smart Wake
Mhm.
because different sleep cycles, you're able to wake up more alert or less alert. Like, when you wake up and you feel bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, that's because 'cause you've woken up either during the 1st or 3rd sleep cycle, but the
Right.
2nd one, if you wake up from that one, then you're groggy. So, it will, based on your breathing and all of that stuff, it will tell you it will only wake you up during the 1 or 3 cycle so that you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I love that feature. So,
Excellent. We'll have to talk more about that later because
okay.
yeah, because like if
But
you're
remember,
setting an alarm clock,
just start with making your bed.
yeah, make my bed every day.
Yeah, every day. Thank you for being here.
You happy 100.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, and now I'm bringing on my friend Christine. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Can you center yourself a little bit more in the
Sure.
camera? You're just a
Yeah.
little bit off. I don't know that it'll make a huge difference to viewers, but
How's
just
that? Is
want
that a little bit better?
yeah, that's a little bit better.
Great.
Hi. Thanks for
Hi.
being here.
Well, thank you and happy 100th episode.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I can't I it's amazing that it's here.
It is, yeah. And happy birthday.
So what was it? When did I start this podcast? I think my first episode was in 2018. So it took
Okay.
7 years to get here. And there
Hmm.
were a couple years where it was not really active, but I'm so glad I'm doing it. I feel like it's really been beneficial in so many different ways. And yeah, thanks for being here. I always love having your insight. So,
Hey.
did you have any thoughts on what you were listening to, by the way, as the roundup person?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds, I made a little note here, just honestly for myself, that the reoccurring theme, I think, around our goal has to be what is the specific steps that you're going to take and are they going to be sustainable? So, are they going to be realistic?
Mhm.
And then just doing it consistently. I think that that's, at least for me personally, I always have great ideas and I think, oh, this is a very easy thing to do. It's not going to take a lot of effort. And I do it each day. And then maybe like day 6 or 7, it drops off. And
Mhm.
so I think, from what I heard in some of the advice that you shared, is that that consistency is key. And it can be
Yes.
little. That way it doesn't have to feel overwhelming and it can be sustainable. So I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can build up to it.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
I think when I had decided to pick up, so I was doing the podcast very regularly, I think in 2018, 2019, and then it kind of fell off because
Hmm.
it just didn't seem as important to my business that was existing at the time.
Hmm.
And then when I started Beyond Your Wildest Dreams and Harness the Power of Planning, I decided that it was important again, so I picked it back up, and I think I was
Hmm.
only doing it once a month at first, and
Okay,
I kind of built up to this rhythm of doing it once a week,
got it.
and so, yeah, it was also a steady, small step, getting used to it, "Okay, I can take on a little bit more," sort of
Sure.
thing.
Sure. Well, and like
So
we've discussed, right, the brain science says that in order to create that habit, you have to create the consistency.
mhm,
So, your head says, oh, yeah, this is just something I'm going to do without thinking about it, like getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth, things
correct.
that become almost, you just don't even really necessarily think about it as a chore. It's just
Mhm.
a good idea and you've created a habit.
Yeah, and it's become just a block on my, like, I know Thursday from 9 a.m. to around 1 p.m. my time is just this block
Hmm.
of time that I work on creating the podcast and then slicing and dicing it and uploading it and creating marketing around it and then doing a newsletter. Like, I have this whole workflow. And
Sure.
so it kind of automates, I have these blocks in my week that are just kind of automated where, sometimes the hardest thing is deciding to do something, and then once you decide to do it, the next step is you have to follow through with it. And when you make it
Yes.
a reoccurring thing, it makes it a little bit easier to follow through with it because you're like, I've already decided to do this thing. I'm not thinking about it anymore. Now I'm in doing mode.
I'm doing it. Yeah. And I liked what you said to Angela about it. Could just be something as simple as you're just making your bed. And
30 seconds.
you don't necessarily realize the connections that you're making on a deeper level, right?
Mhm.
That begin to set the stage for success in a bunch of
Mhm.
other areas. And so I like that. It doesn't have to be an overly complicated, overwhelming action plan. It can be something as simple as make your bed.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that roundup. I love it. So, tell me about your goal that you are working towards.
So, something that's become important to me now that I have, an 8 and 10-year-old, is really thinking about how can I ensure my kids have the tools to become. I guess the word that kind of always pops up for me is resiliency.
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
can I ensure that they're feeling like whatever life throws at them, whether it's something as simple as kids being mean in school, or a teacher giving them some tough feedback, to know that that doesn't have to be the end of the world. It doesn't have to be a difficult conversation that results in damage, so to speak, right? But that because they're resilient, they are going to be able to recover quickly
Mhm.
from a difficult situation, ideally learn from it, and be equipped. So when I'm not around, they know how to advocate for themselves. They know how to hear constructive criticism. They know how to share that with others. So, again,
Mhm.
the word that keeps popping up in my head is resiliency.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's the right word. I know that there's this push-pull between, we just have this innate desire to keep our child safe,
Yes.
but keeping them safe, there's a fine line between keeping them safe and kind of coddling them in a way that they don't develop any skills for themselves because they just think that you're gonna do the thing all
Yes,
the time.
yes. I think, something that I had shared with you that maybe your listeners might be interested in is the example where, my daughter really almost did not walk down some stairs on her own, looked as though she just wasn't capable, and she said she was afraid. It scared her, the gaps in between the stairs. And I think, you talk to some parents that are like, then you're gentle, and you take their hand and you put your arm around them, and you guide them, and you remind them that they're not alone. And something I just felt strongly about is, I think fear is normal. We've talked about this as, cavemen, when you hear noises in the woods,
Mhm,
running away from that noise because it could be a predator, that may attack you, is normal, and
mhm.
acting on that fear. I think, being able to go downstairs is an important skill. And I said to Cora, the main reason why I want us to move quickly from this space, or from this feeling, is that, God forbid there's a fire, or God forbid there's an
Mhm,
emergency. I want you to just simply have the confidence
mhm.
to walk downstairs quickly. I want you to be able to do it on your own in
Yeah,
case I'm not there, or an adult, or a teacher. And so this is something that I want to nip in the bud. And
right.
I think that, sometimes when you're reading the parenting books and you're talking with other parents, you will hear parents say, well, I just might put my kid on my back and make it a fun piggyback ride down the stairs.
Mhm.
And I want to instead think about, how do I equip my kids with the tools for
Yeah.
them to be able to know that they're absolutely capable of doing that by themselves.
Yes. Yes, and I think one of the challenges in our culture is that we're uncomfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And as a parent, we feel discomfort over our child's challenges or suffering, perceived or real, and therefore we wanna step in so that we don't feel uncomfortable anymore, the
Yes.
adult. And
Yes.
so you do have to get a little bit uncomfortable with being uncomfortable in this with this, I philosophy, and I know I had kind of something where, my child had her homecoming dance coming up. My kiddo's a teenager,
Okay.
and I gave her a budget. It was $100 for the homecoming dance because I wanted to give her, enough money that she could work with budgeting, but not so much money that she could afford to buy new shoes, new dress, get her hair done, get her
Hmm.
nails done, all of the things. And so she said to me, she really likes fancy nails. And I never do my nails. Literally, it's one of the things I never do.
Hmm.
And she said, I want the fake nails, like the long fake nails with all the designs." And
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I think that might actually be your entire $100. So, if that's what you're interested in, you should start calling around, see how much it costs, and make an appointment."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, mom, can you do it?" Just giving me this like, "Oh, that sounds horrible. Like, I'm so uncomfortable with that idea." And I
Sure.
said, "Nope. If you want that." I mean, and this was one of those things that was kind of easy for me to say because I am not a nail person, and I kind of, it's not how I would spend my time or money. So it was kind of easy for me to be like, "Nope. If you want to do that, you're going to have to do that on your own."
Sure. Sure.
And she wanted it enough, so she kept putting it off. She kept putting it off because we were talking about this. I gave her a budget, I think 2 months before the dance because I wanted to give her the opportunity to get the dress and shoes and stuff maybe for free through our Buy Nothing group, and
Okay.
so that was something that, she did end up doing was not spending money on those because she was able to get them through our Buy Nothing group. If you don't know what Buy Nothing is, that's outside the scope of this, but you should
Right.
definitely watch other episodes and look up Buy Nothing groups because they're great. And so she had the money to do these crazy nails, but she kept putting it off.
Mhm.
And finally, she made the call 48 hours before the dance. She finally wanted it so bad that she was willing to get over her discomfort. And she called 3 places. None of them had availability.
Right.
And we talked about, I said, so was that as hard as you thought it was going to be? And she was like, no, it wasn't as hard. And, so next time, what have you learned from this? And she's like, I'm going to do it a lot earlier next
Exactly.
time.
Yeah. And I think that if you had done that for her, you're not teaching her that right, what happens when you wait. You're not allowing her to take responsibility for something that really she wants. It's not something
Yes.
you wanted. In
Nope.
fact, you would have even been great to be like, no nails, spend your money maybe over here. And I think oftentimes, parents, they will insert themselves and maybe take up room or take up the space. And then I think there is no space left for your child to step into some discomfort. And I liked what you said. I wrote that down so I could remember, the swallow the frog, that the discomfort is okay. We talked about, with fitness. Imagine, you walk into a gym and you look at the equipment and you say, oh, that looks too hard. Oh, I don't know how to use that equipment. That one doesn't really seem for me. And then, 30 minutes you walk out and you haven't done anything, right?
Right.
Most people would say that doesn't make any sense. Like, you have to get on the machine, you have to figure it out. It's going to hurt. It's not going to feel great. The
Yeah.
next day you might even be really sore, but the benefit of that obviously is what we're talking about. And so I often say to the kids, yeah, I know it's uncomfortable to do this. I know it doesn't feel great, but can you please trust me that when I'm not around to do it for you, you're going to feel really good and empowered about doing these difficult things yourself. And, as you know, I studied psychology. That's my degree. And I had always imagined pursuing that. And I think that it became a little bit disconcerting when I thought about the idea that, wow, maybe some people never want to face their discomfort. They always want to simply just talk about how tough things are. And I want to make sure that, my kids are feeling that, yes, it's absolutely okay to talk about how hard things are, but that they're always thinking about what is a way to move forward and
Yes.
get past that discomfort and be stronger as a result of it.
Well, and what's interesting about this goal is that this is not the same kind of goal as we talked about with Natascha and Angela, where it's kind of something that you can circle and build steps to. This is more of you have to have a certain mindset around how you're going to approach your interactions with your child and remind yourself. So I feel like this is the kind of goal where you might just have to, where you might be helped by maybe like writing a kind of a letter to yourself. Like, this is the kind of parent I want to be because I want to raise my children to be able to stand up for themselves, able to pick themselves up when things are going difficult, able to learn from their situations, to have a growth mindset, right? So
Yeah.
those are, just to kind of help you crystallize what it is that you're working towards, because it's a slightly more ephemeral goal. And
Sure. But I
so I
like
think,
that letter idea. That's
yeah, so to
something.
write a letter so you can
Yeah.
think about what it is that you really want, what are the characteristics that you're really hoping to cultivate in your child. And
Yeah.
then to also say, to that end, what I am going to do is to be sure to, right, like one, give them opportunities to solve problems for themselves, right? Two, recognize that my discomfort is separate from their discomfort.
Yes.
And, you know, like sometimes
Yeah.
you just need to name the things in order to move beyond it.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, I think oftentimes parents, teachers, caregivers in general are highly motivated by their own discomfort and wanting to not feel it immediately. And sometimes
Mhm.
the best or the fastest way to not have to feel that is to intervene
Mhm.
because, right, you tend to have the authority. For example, if there's an issue with a school teacher, you tend to kind of be able to not get your way. That doesn't sound right, but to resolve it quickly. And of
Right.
course, as children are learning, that may take more than one conversation.
Mhm.
And that your child may come back home and it hasn't necessarily been resolved, and then you need to continue the conversation. But that's okay. And I think you're right.
Yes.
I think in this letter that I'm writing, and what you said specifically about carving out my discomfort
Mhm.
and putting it over here. Because, the other thing, as children are incredibly resilient to begin with. They
Right.
can move past things very quickly. But if we begin to chip away at, I think, what is probably some innate skill
Mhm.
in handling things on their own, then
Right.
I think that's where we start to see young adults really struggle.
Yeah.
So I think
It's
it's
second guessing
nurturing,
themselves.
second guessing
Mhm.
themselves. So I think it's taking probably a skill that they do have, because we've all read those extraordinary stories about kids who've survived in extraordinary circumstances with
Right.
little to no help
Right.
from others. So we know it's there. I do believe it's innate. And so I can add that to my letter. How do I nurture that, not stifle it?
Yes. Yes. So, and the other thing too is that I
Yeah.
feel like this whole, wanting being uncomfortable with being uncomfortable is kind of related to something else that comes naturally to parents, which is when there's something that needs to happen and your kid is responsible for it, but it's quote unquote easier for you to just do it, or it's faster for you to just do it.
Hmm.
And then they never get to own the responsibility or develop the skills for that thing. Like, for instance, one of these things is cooking. It is challenging teaching a child to cook, but you're gonna put in the work at some point, and either you're gonna put in the work teaching the child to cook, or you're gonna put in
Hmm.
the work preparing all the meals for your child because you never taught them to cook.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it was something that I did with my kiddo very purposefully at a very young age, and she was responsible for making one dinner a night as early as I think she started doing it at 11 or 12. I don't remember when I
I love
was like, "Okay,
that.
you
Yeah.
can start taking this on." Um, but yeah, it took work for me to get there, but now I'm reaping the benefit because she's a great cook already
Yeah.
at not even 15.
Yeah. And don't I recall correctly that even at a very young age, you didn't have, like, for example, separate kid knives, right?
No,
You instead,
we never had knives.
right,
And
you taught, right, your
yes.
kiddo, like, let's just learn the proper way to use this because you can, in fact, cut yourself. And I think that, again, trusting that your children actually are incredibly capable.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think there are a lot of unintended consequences that pop up with some of the things that we've done for quote unquote safety.
Hmm.
Like for instance, we only use glass bottles, and we only used glass bottles because and glass cups. She never had plastic sippy cups or anything like that for health reasons, which I'm really glad now because now we're finding out all the microplastics that are lodged in our brain and stuff like that.
Right.
But, I also did it for environmental reasons, all sorts of reasons. But the thing that I noticed was my kid never threw her cups or bottles. And I think it's because, like, they were heavy, and also maybe she'd seen glass break at some point and she knew what the consequences were.
Sure.
Whereas like
There was already
there's
that awareness.
yeah, there's something fun about throwing a plastic thing because like it bounces and it is kind of like a toy,
Yeah.
and
They get to
just
watch you go pick it up and bring it back like a dog with fetch.
yeah, whatever. So I definitely feel like there's some unintended consequences that come with these choices, that maybe you don't want those consequences. So maybe we need to rethink those choices.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
I think the whole like, oh, it's faster and easier if I just do it is definitely has a lot of unintended consequences that come with it later down the line.
agreed. Yeah, I spent 20 years in human resources sitting across the table from recent college grads. And I had one college grad have his mother call me because he didn't like where he was sitting.
Oh
I
my
remember
gosh.
having to tell the
No.
mother to never call me again about things
How
like that.
inappropriate.
Yeah, and so I see a lot of what happens when we are so incredibly protective and cushioning our children from difficult things and inserting ourselves in handling things for them. I see what happens to them as young adults. They simply don't
Mhm.
have the skill set, and so I think we're as much as we're well intended when they're young,
Yes.
it really is doing a disservice for them.
Cautionary tales. Oh my gosh, I could keep talking forever. I'm just gonna bring Angela back because I know Angela, hopefully you're ready to I'm just gonna bring Angela back. I wasn't planning on bringing Angela back, but she's here in the green room, so I just wanted to bring her back.
Hi,
Thank you so much.
Angela.
That was oh gosh. Okay, the two of you do not start doing your thing. So
You're gonna cut us off?
yeah, right now. So this went way longer than I expected, but it was such a great conversation. I didn't want to cut any of the conversations off. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for being here. I
Thank
love
you.
having you in my life.
You?
And to those of you watching right now, thank you for joining us for the 100th episode of the Harness the Power of Planning. I'm going to say goodbye to my friends right now so that I can just close this out. And thank you so much for joining me for this episode. If you are ready to take your planning journey to the next level, go to my website, bywdreams.com. You can find out about all my books and courses there. If you want to work with me personally, reach out to me. We could figure that out as well. And remember that planning makes everything easier.